Okay, I'm going to go over a couple of terms that are just meant to give you some background. They're not anything that you're going to have to apply, but I just want you to understand that deconstruction is just not something that just kind of popped up and we said, oh, that's deconstruction, let's do it. There's a lot of thought put into how to define this. What does it mean to do deconstruction? And one of the concepts is difference. Um, According to, and this is what Derrida brings to the table with it, according to the metaphysics of presence, deconstruction brings a non-concept called difference. In other words, Derrida is looking at absence versus presence. And so presence is the non-concept, or the opposite of absence. So there's always this kind of duality that we look at of opposites. Derrida uses the term difference, as it's spelled here, to describe the origin of presence and absence, of what's here and what's not here at the same time. And by its very definition, différence is indefinable and cannot be explained, because what Derrida has done is use two different verbs in French to create a sound that means both of them at once. In other words, you do have, first of all, the French verb différer, which means both to defer and to differ. To defer, to wait until later, or to differ, to be different from. And so when he uses, but it turns out that in their gerund form, which we would call in English the ing form, deferring and differing, there is a slight difference. But in French, you don't hear it. It's only when you write it do you see that there's a difference. And so that's why he used a différence in this spelling, which doesn't exist in French, but is exactly pronounced just like differing and deferring. And so he uses that to show that there's always some kind of tension here between the verbal and the written. That when you look at French written, it is not pronounced the way it is written, so that allows you to have lots of play on words. In English, for the most part, again, I don't want to say for the most part, generally speaking, we write somewhat like we speak. And it's even becoming more and more popular as we go on now with, some of the people saying, if they say dis for this, they write it dis, or other people emulate that. So we see more and more moving to that. Spanish typically writes exactly as it sounds. So if you read a word and you know the Spanish alphabet, there's no difference in sound on what you say from the page and then what comes out of your mouth. But in French, there's huge differences. Pretty much every French word has at least one silent letter and can have up to 5 silent letters in a row. So the difference between what is written and what is heard verbally are slightly different. And he plays on that here. And so, of course, being a French critical theorist, this idea of différence, or difference for us, plays into the fact that French has a much looser pronunciation and you can manipulate the language in different ways. He also deals with logocentrism, and this goes back to the idea of pathos, ethos, logos. Logos meaning word. And according to Derrida, logocentrism is the attitude that the word is a central principle for language and philosophy. In the essay that he wrote on this, he he even defined and said, look at the Bible, for example. At the preamble to John, it states, in the beginning was the Word. So from the very beginning, we have the Word. Again, it's now interpreted to mean that the Word, capital W, is Jesus and God at the same time. But for him, it's like we're using the word to mean another person, to mean different things. And so, but it still means a word, which is something that can be verbal. And that's an important aspect. Sorry, it also intrigues him because logos is the Greek word for speech. So if you say in ancient Greek, I want to give a speech, it would be logos. Thought, if you say, I had a thought last night, it would be logos. The word for law was logos. Don't break the logos. Or reason. You need to think about this deeply and use your critical thinking ability to reason why this author did this versus this would be logos as well. So when a Greek person in ancient Greece used the word logos, it could mean either speech or thought or law or reason at the same time. And so context would tease out the meaning, but in just one word it had 4 different meanings. And so the speech was important. What came after it was important. According to Derrida, speech is the original signifier of meaning, and the written word is derived from the spoken word. And that should make sense to you. We started speaking as cavemen, started speaking before they knew how to read and write. So the verbal was the preferred, and from that we then started developing our written language off of it. And so the oral has always been privileged above the written.